Hi, my name's Dan,
Hi, this is Cam.
and today it's been a couple weeks since we talked. Our schedules haven't exactly aligned. I was in Virginia for about a week or 5 days.
I was in La La Land for a couple weeks.
Um, and anyway, it's October, and I thought, well, what is the most obvious thing you do for October if you're talking about really old movies?
You get the scary ones.
Yeah, and in these ones, and a lot of old movies aren't really scary in the modern sense of what we think of scary. They're more atmospheric, and one of the most atmospheric things in the world are Universal monster movies.
Uh, as opposed, what would be second in that list?
Well, I don't quite know, but
Yeah, but
I would
they
say,
had The Crown in the 30s, right?
yeah, the 30s, the 40s,
Yeah.
and the first official Universal monster movie is what else but Dracula with Bela Lugosi from 1931, directed by Todd Browning.
Yes. Uh, I when I read your notes, I now figured out the whatever the original version, 1922, and where
Mm-mm-mm.
that came from.
Nosferatu, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's all based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is a which is generally credited with creating the modern interpretation of vampires. The whole, they suck blood and they, stay. Sorry, you kill them with you repel them with mirrors. Like, are they don't show their reflections in mirrors and
Right.
stuff like that, and they die from sunlight. You know.
And wolfbane apparently is a deadly poison, and you should never touch it. Which they did. She slept with a laurel of wolfbane, but yeah, I told Ellen, my wife, that I was watching this, and she said, "Yeah, that's really creepy." And she said, "Have you got to the part where the women are climbing up the walls of the castle?" And I said, "I don't think that's in this," and it wasn't. So she said it's the original book is quite long.
Oh yeah, I was originally going to listen to it, and then I looked up an audio book of it. It was like 11 hours, and I went
Yeah,
like, "Oh, no, thank you." Like I just totally forgot because my interpretation was that it was like a 100-page read
yeah,
because it's like the 19th century,
yeah.
and so like I assumed stuff was just really short back then, stories and stuff. But I'm like, no, apparently I was mistaken. So, what is your history with Dracula, the figure, and maybe Dracula the movie?
What's the question, Dan? Sorry.
What is your history with Dracula the character and Dracula the movie?
Uh, Not seen the movie. Of course, seen millions of pictures of Bela Lugosi. Uh, I was the campaign manager for my junior high class president, and her name was Linda Pelosi. And one of the campaign posters said, "Bela Lugosi likes Linda Pelosi."
Oh wow, that is nice.
And of course, Count Chocula and the Count, but no, uh, I've not, and I've not really wanted to. I think the whole vampire genre is, of course, due to him, but I think they took it many steps too far.
Well, I was thinking because my history with this movie, and obviously I know Dracula the figure. One of my favorite just like movies to watch, like just from an art design, is Bram Stoker's Dracula from the '90s with Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins, because that's like one of the most beautiful movies ever made, like just from a visual standpoint. And that quote unquote maybe adheres more to the actual Bram Stoker story, and we can talk about the differences because there are quite a few.
Yeah.
This was actually based off a play more directly that was based on
Right.
Bram
Yeah.
Stoker's book. And the whole reason for that was because, well, Universal was like, well, we can't cough up the money, so we have to make it unlimited sets, and we can't make it like, I think it was Carl LeMay Jr., the head of Universal, went like, well, I'm going to purchase this book and I'm going to make it into like a lavish gothic production. Oop, I think we kind of ran out of money and we can't do this, so let's go kind of a little cheaper.
Yeah, I was interested and I thought something was up with those signs at sea, uh, but which I thought was funny because Dracula appeared on the ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And while they show it tossing and turning, he's standing perfectly still.
Yeah, the ship part of Dracula and the novel and most Dracula adaptations, they always cut out the extended sequence on the ship because it's a famous part of Nosferatu is him coming on the ship to London or whatever to like meet Minna so he can essentially eat her, like
Right.
suck on her blood, because ultimately Dracula is kind of about a very horny vampire.
Yeah. They left that part out of the movie.
I mean, definitely pre-code in the sense of his psychosexuality, like, or psycho, his interest in women is like very apparent.
Yes.
But my history with Dracula the character, and Dracula the movie is, well, I knew Dracula. I grew up with Dracula. Dracula is a popular figure in all fiction, the king of vampires, the most famous vampire of them all. But I had never seen the Lugosi film until I'm pretty sure it aired on AMC back in like the 2000s, and I was channel surfing. It was October, and AMC, when they used to play really old movies like John Wayne and Clint Eastwood films, they would sometimes play the Universal monster movies. And I watched it, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. It's like really atmospheric, and we can talk about it, but like there's a lot of interesting cinematography techniques in this film that make it very expressionistic almost, because the way that Dracula essentially controls his victims is by staring at them. And there's like wide shots of him just like going straight to the camera, and it closes up on his face.
Right. So in a way, to me, he presaged Hitchcock's use of mirrors as a framing device, because that part seemed very modern to me. The use of the picture in picture, basically.
The only thing I question is why it couldn't get a really large mirror. I guess it was more affordable or something. I know somebody, one of the notes I read kind of took note of that, was like, well, they just have a little mirror like on his thing. Van
Cigarette
Helsing,
case.
yeah.
Yeah.
Van Helsing has a little mirror in his case that he uses, and Dracula's like, no.
Well, one advantage is it's portable. So is he repelled by mirrors, or?
Well, it exposes him.
Yeah,
Because
right.
the whole legend of vampires is that you can't see the reflections.
Right.
In mirrors and stuff. And that exposes him because, this version of Dracula, like, I think Nosferatu is more closer to what Bram Stoker wrote Dracula as, which is a very alien, like, not exactly pleasant to be around, like walking around like with his hands like this.
Is that available to stream?
Oh yeah, it's free. It's in the public domain. It's a silent film, so
on YouTube. Then? Yeah, okay.
You'll find it with various soundtracks, different ones. So depending on which one you prefer, obviously. But because the Bela Lugosi Dracula is
silent.
Yeah,
Yes,
silent, 1922.
Right.
The Bela Lugosi Dracula is very romantic in a lot of ways, because Bela Lugosi, he was like almost 50 when he played this role, and he'd been playing on the stage for like years and years and years. So he's obviously older. But like in his peak youth, I watched a A&A biography on Bela Lugosi like several years ago. He was a very handsome man. And this version of Dracula is like very quote unquote welcoming. But what I find interesting is that because the movie opens and like in most Dracula interpretations, it's Jonathan who goes to Dracula's castle to get the house deal. And in this one, it's all focused on Renfield, because it's more about the psychological torture of turning Renfield essentially into a mindless slave.
Yes.
Who's obsessed with Dracula and will do anything for his...
This is the guy who liked to eat bugs.
Yeah, master. Like that, Dwight Fry. Because, and like, the interesting thing to me about Renfield as a character, and like, these are all stock characters, and we know them, like, where Renfield is the assistant to Dracula. Lucy is supposed to be the victim who dies, so Dracula can use his powers. I wrote that scene, I'm like, you should have kept those doors shut,
So, why, after he sucks their blood, do they feel so alive? You'd think they'd be weakened by having their blood, or is it because his blood is mixed?
I think it's inconsistent from victim to victim, because if you watch this movie, sometimes he goes to victims and he goes like, he gets, he's sucking that woman when he goes to that play, when he's going to like London or whatever, where it is specifically, he goes there for the first time, he's leaving his castle. He sucks that victim, but instead of like killing her or turning her into like one of his brides, quote unquote, he hypnotizes her. He tells her to do things.
Oh, right. Yeah, and forget about him. So there are brides of Dracula as well as brides of Frankenstein.
Yeah, I mean, well, Frankenstein has a bride. Dracula has brides.
Okay,
That is a distinctive difference.
he had an appetite.
I think they're all supposed to be victims of Dracula, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, there's been so many Dracula movies. It is interesting to go back to this because it's very atmospheric. Like I said, the cinematography is gorgeous. It's black and white. I mean, a lot of people over the years have kind of called this movie a little dull, which I get
Yeah.
because it's very low and um, it's not exactly the most exciting movie in the world, and I do think there are some limitations. The script was supposed to be much longer, and I watched the Spanish version. And we'll talk about the Spanish version later.
Okay.
But the Spanish version, for one thing, feels like a more complete film.
Yeah.
Like more character development. It's expanded upon. It's not like I need movies to be very long, but I think a lot of the focus of the film, like the idea of like a woman thinking she's turning into a vampire or a woman being psychologically tortured by a vampire, maybe doesn't get as much attention, relatively speaking, because of the way that the film kind of just sets itself up. But what I'm always interested in, and like when I'm interested in Universal monster movies in general, is that like, we think of Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and stuff like that as being set in like the 19th century, but in this movie there's a lot of modern equipment
Uh.
for 1930s. Like,
Okay. Explain.
well, they're driving cars, like,
Oh, right.
and like like the hospital scenes. Those are clearly like very 30s, 20s robes and stuff.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's you'll see it all the way through because I think when I did my Wolfman video like several years ago now, I noted that Universal monster movies exist in kind of a what you might call a timeless quality where it's like they technically are supposed to be set in like the past and they have like gothic settings and houses and fogs and rotting corpses and like all that stuff, but like they use a lot of modern equipment
Yeah.
because I think it was mostly budgetary reasons, but like that just gives them kind of an innate a timeless quality almost, I would say, in terms
Yeah.
of their settings.
So, in the line of Universal horror movies, I assume this was the first.
Yes, it was.
Can you name some of the other ones?
Well, Dracula was 1931, then Frankenstein came around that Christmas. And then The Mummy, The Invisible Man,
Oh, right.
those are the first four. And then we had Dracula's Daughter and Son of Dracula and, Bride of Frankenstein and Son of Frankenstein. And
Okay. Did Swamp Thing? That's different.
yeah, Swamp Thing is based on a comic book character, but it's definitely monster adjacent.
Okay. Now, Invisible Man. There was another movie in the 50s or something, right?
Yeah, there's been quite a few Invisible Man type movies.
Yeah. Okay.
There was one several years ago that came out. I saw one of the last movies I saw before the pandemic happened was that remake with Elizabeth Moss, The Invisible Man.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fairly recent.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the primer.
Primer, yes. But I think it's interesting in these if you watch all these movies back to back to back, like I do sometimes for Halloween, because I was making a video on Lugosi and Karloff films, like just them starring in films together, and like I watched The Black Cat, which I initially wrote I wanted us to talk about later on. I think we can do all this in November too. I think it's plausible.
Okay.
But a lot of these films, like I said, they were very inspired by German expressionism in terms of their details, their designs, the cinematography. Carl Freud, who shot the cinematography, is like considered one of the great like early cinematographers of sound film. He's German, I believe, and he later went on to direct The Mummy. Yes, German, Austrian, Hungarian. Sorry. He shot movies like Metropolis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he later went on to, I believe, shoot I Am Lucy. Yes, he shot I Am Lucy. You can believe that.
I Love Lucy.
Yeah, I Love Lucy. Sorry, I Am Lucy. I don't know why that might...
Oh, wow. No, that's interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I saw Lucille Ball at the World's Fair in New York in
Oh, wow.
1963. She looked very old to me.
1963?
Yeah.
She was about in her 50s then, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, and, Todd Browning, like, he's very horror adjacent. you know, he was Lon Chaney Sr. He directed a lot of movies with Lon Chaney Sr., including Fire Over London, which is considered one of those lost essential films that everybody goes like, oh, we only have stills and a couple images of this, and it's like, this is supposed to be some masterpiece that has been lost to time. Hey guys, slight correction here, but the Lon Chaney Sr. film I'm referring to is actually called London After Midnight. Anyway, carry on with the rest of the episode. But, and like, apparently I read this, I'm sure, I don't know if I mentioned this in my notes, but like, he was totally dissatisfied. He was just not into directing this movie when he made it. From all accounts, like, he wanted Lon Chaney Sr. to play this role, and then Lon Chaney Sr. Died tragically in 1930. He only made one sound film, and he was like just not interested. Apparently, kind of did. A lot of people took over, blah blah. Not like silent directed, but like a lot more people were invested behind the scenes. And so when a lot of people talk about why this movie is quote unquote questionable in its quality, I think they always refer to him just basically slagging it off and kind of just coming in and doing his job. Yeah. And yeah, and when I read all the quotes and I found all the quotes about this movie, like even back then, a lot of people were slagging off horror. Like, it's interesting because I think the perception is that this stuff is seen as very, very low quality popularity.
Yeah.
Like, and like it probably got even worse once they introduced slashers to films and stuff.
Well, was the critical reception good?
I think it was mostly positive. Like, I know retroactively, a lot of people have spoken praise of it. Roger Ebert wrote a very great movie essay on this in like in the 90s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he included it in his great movie essays, which was a series, you know, old movies or films earlier that he decided, like, I'm going to write a review of them, or like a much longer essay, you know, type review on them and talk about why I think they're great movies. And actually, I probably should note this, but Lugosi wasn't, Lon Chaney Sr. wasn't even the first choice, apparently. It was a German actor by the name of Conrad Veidt.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that. I mentioned that because a couple days ago I saw two people talking about the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which Conrad Veidt is the male heroic lead in that, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And he was in Casablanca. He was one of the German officers in Casablanca. Okay. But I think his lasting legacy is actually, there's a movie called The Man Who Laughs. And I probably should mention this, but if you ever get a picture, look up Conrad Veidt and The Man Who Laughs, you might recognize a certain clown character in very popular media called the Joker.
Oh, yeah?
The Joker was inspired by Conrad Veidt's look from The Man Who Laughs. Like, just the grin and, like, you know, the makeup and, like...
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And that's another great silent film, very directed by a bunch of German, you know, European immigrants in Hollywood. So it's got a lot of the expressionistic lighting and stuff. And so what stood out to you about this film at any level?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
Sorry, what stood out to you about this film?
Well, definitely the cinematography. The sets that... Like, I got a little confused between the two residences sometimes, but the one with that incredible staircase and stuff, that was Dracula's castle, right? And then, who'd you call it, lived in town, right?
You mean the gypsies?
Oh, no, she lived in England, right?
Yeah, Mina?
Yeah.
Yeah, she lived in England. I was initially confused by that myself, but... honestly,
so he transported to Transylvania?
Yeah, he well, initially he went to see a play or an opera or whatever it was, and he took the ship and he went to England. And then she decided, I think they decided to stay at his castle, or like not his castle, but like he just decided to start hanging around one of her mansions, specifically because he was obsessed. He didn't remember, he brought himself in like a guest.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing about Dracula is like he's a very welcoming host.
Right.
Problem is that you gotta be prepared for him to try to bite you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting movie in a lot of ways, and it's very early, and... well, as I was watching it, I'm like... there's a lot of interesting thematic material. Like, the one I always think about Dracula is the idea of free will or like willpower.
Oh, like the scientist,
Van Helsing is like,
right?
at least in this version anyway, is like, he's supposed to be the residential, he drops all the exposition. He explains everything about vampires.
Right,
And
right.
that's always been his role in most Dracula adaptations.
Yeah, but that he got drawn in until his will overcame Dracula's.
Yeah. Dracula is a story about a lot of things, and one of the things it is definitely about is mind control and mind power. And,
Yeah.
yeah, and I know, you see the scenes with Renfield when he's at the sanitarium, and like, one of the guys over there who's like a recurring character in the film goes like, "Hello." He's like the most English guy ever. He's like, "Hello, hello, hello."
Yeah.
I joked like, I'm pretty sure that was obviously an American actor doing an accent. Although I could be wrong. And I always find it interesting because there's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of movies based on Dracula.
Yeah.
There was a movie a couple years ago called The Last Voyage of the Dementor, which was about the ship portion of Dracula.
Oh, really? Huh. Yeah. Wow.
And then there was a movie a couple years ago also called Renfield, which was basically, it was a superhero movie almost about, Dracula's control over Renfield, who was like really young and like aspirational and blah blah. So they're still doing it, and like I saw Nosferatu, that recent version last year,
Uh-huh.
and it has a lot of the same hallmarks. Because Jonathan goes to the house and blah blah, and like Van Helsing and all these versions of the characters. And the interesting thing to me about that version is that Renfield in it is like, he's not forced into becoming Dracula's servant. He wants to become Dracula's servant. He's obsessed with like, enchantments and like, flaming fires. He joins like, Orlok. And that's a version of Orlok or Dracula, Count Orlok, that's like evil. I would describe that version of, the vampire to be like, he's just straight up evil.
In this movie, he's misunderstood.
Well, he's not misunderstood. I would say he's more, he's more, not, because if you notice, like, when Renfield goes there, that's Dracula driving the, that's Bela Lugosi pretending to be, the driver.
Oh, right. Yes, yes.
I didn't think it got until my second rewatch to realize that, oh yeah, that's Bela Lugosi. Because Dracula's other thing is that he's a shapeshifter. But because they don't have a budget to do it, they're not going to show him turning into a wolf.
Right.
Yeah,
the bat was the bat was funny because bats fly nothing like that, but
yeah,
they don't hover, etc., etc. But
yeah, it's very it's very early bat effects. They didn't really quite lock this stuff up.
Yeah.
Because I always thought it was funny. The first time I watched it, I thought like, is the bat not moving? And then I watched it. Oh, the bat is moving. It's just moving very slowly.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously a string. And, and I mean, this movie has an interesting cast because we'll talk about this with Frankenstein and, The Mummy and stuff like this. But, like, all these actors are in all these Universal movies. Edward Sloan, who played Van Helsing, he was in Frankenstein and he was in The Mummy in similar roles.
Oh, really?
Dwight Fry, who played Renfield, he was the hunchback in Frankenstein, who was not Igor, he was named Fritz. He was the hunchback assistant. David Banner, who played Jonathan, who kind of doesn't really get much to do in this film, and because they mostly take away his arc by placing it entirely on Renfield, like him coming to the house. In the book, it is Jonathan, but he doesn't really get much to do. But like, he was often cast as the quote unquote heroic lead of all these Universal movies. He's kind of a stiff, if I'm being honest. Doesn't really make much of an impression. But he does the same thing in Dracula. He did the same thing in The Mummy. He's the one of the couple in The Black Cat, which is a great film I rewatched several days ago. And I mean, there's a lot they wanted to do with this movie, and I read somewhere like they cut out stuff of the script. Like I think there's a scene that the Hays Code cut out. But I'm not quite sure what the whole details of those are because it's kind of a little vague.
So this was post Hays Code.
It was pre-code, 1931.
Oh, right. 33 is the
34 is the Hays Code.
34, okay.
You'll see it with these movies, like they have a lot more suggestive and overt themes.
Yeah.
And like we'll talk about it, but like they made sequels to this film because it was a huge hit,
Yes.
very profitable, didn't really cost a lot of money.
Did did color versions of the story have his eyes turn red?
I don't believe so. I mean, the thing about Bram Stoker's Dracula is that Dracula kind of looks really, really old in that movie and like really weird. And the whole thing about that movie is that it plays up on Dracula being a shapeshifter. So like there's that famous scene where he turns into a snake at one point.
Huh.
It's um I don't believe so, but I haven't watched every single adaptation of Dracula, so
No.
I can't possibly answer that question quite literally. Mm.
Of course, I just had a flash of Village of the Damned.
Oh
Because
yeah.
their eyes, they didn't glow red, but they certainly did light up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting because sorry, I keep saying that all the time. I'm still getting the hang of these. Don't worry. But like, Mina's whole arc of the Dracula story is that like she thinks she's turning into a vampire or she's close to like if you're bitten by Dracula, you'd think you'd just start turning into a vampire and there'd be no way to reverse it. But, law logic basically means that it just depends on what he wants out of you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I thought she was actually quite good in
Yeah.
the role.
The actress's name was Helen Chandler. And she had a rather tragic story. I believe she died of burns. And she retired from the business and she died of burns, basically. Yeah, she battled alcoholism. And, yeah, she was severely burned in an apartment.
I'm looking at some of her latest movies, later movies.
Most of them are pretty obscure.
She made a lot of movies in a short time.
Yeah, most actors back then did because they were signed to contract studios. And movies used to be made like, there were directors like that. It was their job. They finished a movie up and they'd be like, well, done with that film. I'm on to the next.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. After making Dracula and it was a huge hit, Todd Browning cashed it in and he made Freaks. And that might have personally killed his career professionally.
Yeah. What year was Freaks?
1932.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a very early sound film. And so I don't know if I have anything else to say about the movie. I don't know what it is about these conversations. But I do have a lot to say about the stuff after the movie.
Right.
Because I went the extra mile, and I'm a person who's obsessed with, basically doing everything associated with the film. So there were 2 sequels. I watched both of them. The first one is called Dracula's Daughter. And the weirdest thing about Dracula's Daughter, and I made note of this, is that it claims it's based on the short story Dracula's Guest by Bram Stoker. And actually, I should probably mention this, but in school, we read a copy of, like, Dracula's Guest, which is just an abbreviated version of, like, Jonathan going to the castle. But the thing is like, it is absolutely not based on anything from Dracula's Guest. It's, like, I don't even know why that credit is there. It's weird.
Yeah.
Clarification time again. Dracula's Guest is actually a short story involving a random Englishman. It does not concern Jonathan Harker, and there is debate whether it was an excised chapter from the novel or something that Bram Stoker wrote independently of Dracula. The reason that Dracula's Daughter credits the short story is because David Selznick purchased the rights and then sold them to Universal. Anyway, back with your regularly scheduled program. But the second interesting thing about Dracula's Daughter is that it focuses on Dracula's daughter. I mean, duh.
Yeah.
And she's played by an actress named Gloria Holden. But what I find interesting about this movie, and what I think a lot of people have glommed onto it over the years, is like it has very LGBTQ themes for the time. Because she's obsessed with a woman. She one of her victims she takes and like just tells her to undress herself. And like there's a lot of like staring calmingly.
Well, okay, so Dracula got married and had a baby?
It's confusing. I don't think they actually care. The movie claims like Van Helsing shows up in it again and he claims he's like 500 years old or something. And I'm like, yeah, but it's supposed to be 500 years. And I wrote this, why the heck are they dressed in the same hospital garbs again?
Right, yeah. So 500 years would place it in... Oh, because even though it was made in the 30s, it took place sometime in 1800s or something. No, because there were scars. So
Yeah, at the time period in these movies are insane. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think they care. But, like, I think that's just one of the biggest things I noted. Like, dear God, like, what year is this movie supposed to be set?
Yeah.
But, and it's interesting because the story about Dracula's daughter is about Dracula's daughter trying to live a normal life. But because she's evil and she's a villain, she really can't live a normal life for very long before receding back into becoming like basically a vampire who wants to, eat people and victimize them or something. And she sets her sights on a man, and this doctor man, and she's got a manservant too, who it's kind of like Renfield if Renfield was willing to go along with Dracula. Yep, 1936, Dracula's daughter. But as Sandor is the name of the manservant, by the way, the assistant. Yeah, and I mean, the movie was actually loosely inspired by a Gothic novel called Carmilla, which is often cited by a lot of British, one of the first British works to deal with lesbian relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, there's a lot of that interesting coding going on. I can't say the movie's entirely great. I mean, Dracula's daughter kind of has an interesting character arc, and then she doesn't have an interesting character arc, I would say. Because I think I noted this, like, the code would have been on them being like, well, yeah, you can't make this character too sympathetic, or else the audiences will like her.
Yeah. Does she meet an end by a stake?
Actually, she gets killed. There's a climax where she takes the other leading lady, a woman named Janet Blake, and she pulls her over, and then her manservant betrays her and like shoots arrows and like kills her. Like,
silver arrows?
Yeah, like bow and arrows, like just
Right.
stakes her in and with a stake, and she dies, and then he dies.
Okay.
And they get out of the castle. It's very interesting watching this film and watching it after seeing Dracula. And then the other film I watched was Son of Dracula. Because apparently Dracula has a lot of blood relatives.
Yes,
I don't know how this
so
stuff
to
works.
speak.
This one's Lon Chaney Jr.
Huh.
as Dracula's son, who's Alucard. And you know what Alucard is? Spelled, what Alucard is? That is Dracula spelled backwards.
Oh, right. Of course.
And this one was, I thought it was quite a step down from the first two. Okay, I gotta be quite honest because the title is not misleading and it isn't misleading. So let me explain this. It's called Son of Dracula, but it's not really about Dracula's son. And because, Dracula, like, I probably should mention this, but another great thing about Dracula is that even though Dracula is not supposed to be the main character in Dracula, in the Lugosi film at least, he has a lot of presence because he's always constantly hanging around in the background.
Yeah.
It gives you the impression that he's in the movie. I think he is in the movie for a lot of screen time. And then, Dracula's daughter is kind of about Dracula's daughter. That's an interesting character arc right there. Son of Dracula is about a guy getting obsessed over his dead wife.
So, in each of those movies, does the original Dracula show up?
No, they mention him.
Oh, okay.
The connective tissue to Dracula's daughter was Van Helsing shows up.
Oh, right. Okay.
Doing the exact same role and explaining vampires. And then Son of Dracula, like, nobody shows up again for that because they were like, no, I'm out. I'm done with my garlic breaths and my... But, I think that movie, Son of Dracula, has kind of gotten a lot of criticisms over the years because a lot of people think that Lon Chaney Jr. was woefully miscast.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, he's not helped by the fact that he doesn't really have much of a character to play.
Yeah.
Because Son of Dracula, Alucard just shows up randomly, like, it actually makes sense why he got an and billing instead of, like, top billing. Because it's not really his movie. It's about this guy who basically is, like, loses his wife, gets killed by Alucard, who becomes obsessed with her. And then he starts having visions because Alucard starts playing with him. And then he has to kill him by the end. The one thing I'll give it, though, is that the visual effects are a lot better. They've definitely improved.
So what are the separation between? You said Bride was.
Well, daughter was 36, and I believe Son of Dracula was 1943. So
Okay.
we're talking like 7 years.
Yeah, and but that was black and white also.
They're all black and white
Oh,
because
yeah.
that was just the common thing to do with more low budget movies.
Okay, just as an aside, uh, when did it? When did black and white movies fade out almost exclusively? Or
Well, the 60s.
in the 60s.
Because like the thing is that for the longest time it was very expensive to use Technicolor.
Hmm.
Because there's this story, I think, when they made Gone with the Wind, they used up so much Technicolor that other MGM productions could not use it for like a year.
Really?
Yeah, because that movie was like, that was one of the most vibrant looking movies of all time at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so basically, when studios stopped using black and white regularly in the 50s, but because there were B movies being made, those had to use black and white, basically like Corman.
Okay.
Corman had to keep using black and white until the 60s, for example.
Uh-huh.
Because that was just cheaper to shoot in black and white.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then by the 70s, black and white was like, if you wanted your movie to be in black and white, it was intentionally a stylish throwback.
Right.
By that point, it was, it was nostalgic.
That'd be an interesting series of movies that were made in black and white intentionally. Like Psycho was black and white. Right?
Yeah, Psycho was actually black and white partially because of cheapness. And, famously, Hitchcock used his television set to shoot that movie because the studios were like, no way, Jose, we're not touching that material.
Yeah, and it's not really suited for color.
No, I mean, one of the great things about black and white, and I think you see it in these Universal monster movies, is like, if those movies are in color, like, you start to see imperfections more.
Right.
For one thing, like, they hide all the, like, the obvious limitations.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff looks a lot more cheesier and chintzier.
Yeah.
But because it's in black and white, like, and because it's all, uses very, like, fog and, like, all these classical techniques, like, it's very striking.
Yeah.
That's why, like, colorizing black and white movies is kind of a falsome fail game because those movies kind of just lose a lot of their edge. A lot of the intrigue that comes from making them in black and white. So yeah, I watched Son of Dracula. And I should also mention. So I watched Son of Dracula. And obviously I watched the Spanish version of Dracula.
Yeah.
Because when we talked about The Big House last time, I mentioned that one of the most common things to do before movies could travel internationally was to make foreign language versions of films to play for particular demographics overseas. And so what happened?
The same cast and same.
Well, the same sets, different actors, but the same.
Oh, really?
Set.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So what you get is like the same movie ostensibly, but like you get to see it played out differently and like differently shot and differently acted.
Okay, all right.
And for the longest time, the Spanish version of Dracula had this reputation like it's superior, it's longer, And I gotta say, I agree to a certain extent because I watched this movie. I was able to find a copy of it, and I thought, oh wow, this expands upon the story significantly. Like when Mina and Jonathan are talking, like there's just more scenes where she's crying and screaming because she's so scared of what's going to happen to her, and the stuff with Renfield is a little more expounded upon, and like when Renfield is going to the castle, like I should note this, like when he's in the he's going in the horse and buggy, like there's a scene where a woman just flat out the horse goes over and a woman flat out falls on him. And that's one scene where I'm like, well, that was just there for comic relief. But what I think this movie has one fatal flaw. One major, serious, fatal flaw.
Okay.
The actor playing Dracula is mugging for the camera excessively.
Oh, really?
Yes. I'm trying to look up his name, but the man just does a lot of these looks. He just goes like, because a lot of people say that Lugosi's acting in Dracula was like very like theatrical, and like it is like he's he's over the top, but like Carlos Villarius, County Dracula, is he plays a particularly hungry Dracula. It looks like.
Oh yeah.
Like he's just not hiding it.
And is it always women?
Yeah, I mean, because the whole point is like sexual, like
Okay.
obsession. He's always going after women. hmm I wanted to,
And men, he just destroys their mind.
yeah, I think when he starts going after their grooms and brides, and like
Right.
that's when the men just break down and have psychological problems. I mean, in some stories he does go after men too, but like Dracula is a man, and he's kind of a particular man, so I think he just has a sexual appetite.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to put it. So yeah, I thought the Spanish version was a lot better in a lot of ways. I mean, they all look exactly the same. Like I think the Spanish version actually uses the earlier version of the script that was longer and had more character development and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels more complete in a weird way. But that one gaping, glaring flaw of the lead actor
Yeah.
just constantly going,
So is he sort of breaking the fourth wall, or what's that expression?
um, he's not breaking the fourth wall, because breaking the fourth wall is like,
Talking to the
yeah,
audience.
he'd be like, yeah, folks, don't worry, the show's not over yet.
Right.
That's breaking the fourth wall. In Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he regularly breaks the fourth wall and does stuff like that. Just a random example.
Uh-huh.
But it's interesting because most of the foreign language film versions of movies from like the early sound era of film, they're lost. Or at least they're very hard to find.
Yeah.
The Spanish version of Dracula is kind of famous in its own right, which makes it a rarity. And then after watching those films, I also watched another movie with Bela Lugosi called Return of the Vampire. And the reason I watched this movie should be a little obvious from the title, but so this is a movie this is not a Dracula sequel, but this movie does feature Lugosi in a black cape, and he plays a vampire. And excuse me,
Is he as dapper,
uh,
well dressed?
yeah, he's a little more overt. I think it's a little cheaper actually. Armin Tesla is the name of the vampire. And the interesting thing to me about this movie is that he has a servant who is a wolf man.
Oh yeah, cool.
And he controls the wolf man, and like,
It's not Michael Landon, is it?
no. I mean, it's not a teenage werewolf, sorry if you're looking for that. I watched that movie like a year ago when I watched a bunch of random werewolf movies. But basically, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because that's a movie where the vampire is a lady, and she is an exceptionally strong lady, and the movie is set during World War II. So it's more overt about bombings and stuff like that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting to watch. I didn't really particularly grab my attention, but it was like a quick cheapie. Yep. Columbia Pictures actually hired him because they wanted Lugosi to play Dracula, but Universal obviously owned the trademark,
Mm-hmm.
so they changed it to Armin Tesla. So in a way, that is like an unofficial Dracula sequel.
Yeah. So where are we going with this monster movies? What is
Well, Frankenstein is next.
next? Okay.
I'm gonna go in order, and actually, I wanted to mention another thing. I was watching Son of Dracula, and like, I found it interesting because the movie didn't really stand out to me, but there's a bit where I started hearing music, and I probably should mention this, but true. I heard this. Have you ever seen those Sherlock Holmes Basil Rathbone movies?
No. Well, I might have seen one.
Well, they have this particular intro where like it's this dark, ominous music, and these are Universal films.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was watching Son of Dracula, and there's a sequence where they're fighting, and I started to hear, wait, have I heard that music somewhere? And I went like, oh my god, that is the theme for the Basil Rathbone Nigel Bruce Sherlock Holmes series,
Huh.
literally.
Is it a classical theme?
No, it's something that a composer wrote and they just reused. And
Interesting.
that is like that was the most interesting thing about me about the movie was actually noticing that music and being like, wow, that 20 snippets, it's straight up the same same theme. There's no score in the, Dracula. I should probably mention because it was written in 1931 and they didn't think they needed a score for it. But like in the 90s when they reissued the movie or they redid the movie, they actually asked Philip Glass to write a score because the only real piece of and it's a very Philip Glass score, but I've listened to it. The only piece of like notable music in Dracula is Swan Lake at the beginning. And when they made Ed Wood and with where Martin Landau played Bela Lugosi, composer Howard Shore used Swan Lake as Bela Lugosi's theme, which was a really nice callback to Dracula. Did you notice the opening Swan Lake?
I did not.
Mm.
Of course, I'm pretty ignorant about
it's a
classical music. So.
Yeah, I mean, but did you notice there was no score?
Yeah.
Yeah, no score.
0-0.
Mm. No. What, you want me to suck your blood again?
No. Yeah.
So, so, again, a conversation kind of going all over the place. We're still working this stuff out, but I think we've gotten to a very good place, 13 episodes or so in.
Yeah. It's, I noticed in your write-up that it was setting the stage for the podcast. In other words, you didn't do much cinema analysis, or you just sort of set the scene of how the movies came to be and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I thought was good.
Thank you. So yeah, that was Dracula, directed by Todd Browning. It was also my brief thoughts on the Spanish version of Dracula,
Right.
Dracula's Daughter, Son of Dracula, and Return of the Vampire.
There you go.
Very briefly. So, for those who wonder where we've been for these past couple of weeks, well, we decided I'd come back and I'd make a little more of a tabulated result because there's a lot of stuff associated with these films that I find very interesting.
Yep.
Anyway, so now I think we've kind of outwaged our vampire discussion for now.
Yep.
So next time I want to go and talk about what is next to Dracula.
Frankenstein.
Yep, and that's very fitting, I should add, because there's a new
Right.
Frankenstein movie this year, actually.
Yeah, which I've seen, actually, so.
Well, wait, which Frankenstein?
I thought the original one.
Oh, yeah, no, there's a new Frankenstein movie this year coming out, actually.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, no, that just came to the nugget. It's coming Friday, actually. It's directed by Guillermo del Toro. And I'm really interested in seeing that. But I thought we'd go back to that because that also has some really interesting thematic themes, obviously.
All right.
And there's a lot of sequels to that. And I watched Son of Frankenstein a couple days ago, actually. Funny enough.
Well, I think we'll hear more about that next week.
Rawr. Yeah. Anyway, my name is Dan.
And this is Cam.
Until we meet again, see you next time, guys.